Here's another example of graphing parabolas. So we have f of x equals negative 1/2 x squared minus 3x minus 13 halves. And right away we can tell the y-intercept. The y-intercept will be the point 0, negative 13 halves. So I can write that in here. That's really easy because it's just whenever x is 0, that's going to be your intercept. Sometimes we just say the intercept is negative 13 over 2 or negative 6.5. And that's just when x is 0. If we put 0 in here and 0 in here, what's left is negative 13 halves. And this is the y value. Sometimes we can write this as y equals negative 1/2 x squared minus 3x minus 13 halves. Because it does, and when we're talking about graphing, it represents the vertical value or coordinate of the function, of the rule, I should say, when you put data into that. So that's like negative 6.5. So that's our intercept. We could actually put that in. That's going to be negative 6.5. So right over there, while we're at it. Then we want to put it in vertex form. What is it shaped like, a U or an N? Well, since it's negative, shaped like an N. So that means it's going to be open down. So we can put that in. Okay, now let's put it in vertex form, and then we'll be able to find the vertex. So we want to have just an x squared here, so we need to get rid of this negative sign and the 2. So what I'll just do is multiply both sides by negative 2. Now, if there was a 2 in front, I could divide. If it was negative 2 times that, I could divide by negative 2. But since it's negative 1/2, I'll just multiply by negative 2. And negative 2 times negative 1/2 is just 1, so now I've got x squared. A negative times a negative is positive. 2 times 3 is 6x. There's no fraction there. And a negative times a negative is positive. And 2 times 13 over 2 is 26 over 2, or just 13. So now we've got a nice trinomial there. And now we'll separate this a little bit so we can complete the squares. So we've got plus 6x and then plus 13 to put this in vertex form. Now remember, our negative 2 is still hanging out over here, so don't forget that. We've got to put it back when we're done with our algebraic house cleaning over here. And then what's the square root of x squared is x. What's half of 6, 3. And what I'm going to add here to make this a trinomial square is this squared. So 3 squared is 9. But since I'm working on the same side of the equation, not opposite sides, but same side, if I add 9 to the right, I've got to subtract 9, which is a net of 0. 9 minus 9 is 0, so that's okay. We can always add 0, any number, and it doesn't change the value. Now we've got a nice trinomial square, so we know that it's going to be a binomial squared, so plus goes here, and these little red numbers go in here, 6 and 3. And 13 minus 9 is 4. And we're not done because we haven't put the negative 2 back, so don't forget to do that. And remember, if we had a 5 in front of this, we would divide everything by 5. So we'd have a 1/5, and we'd have to multiply when we're done. So just remember that possibility. Okay, so then we'll divide everything by negative 2 or multiply by negative 1/2. That's the same thing, right? So we have f of x equals, and then I'll make that negative 1/2 times x, oops, forgot my square, excuse me. X plus 3 squared. And then divide 4 by negative 2. And you get positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So be careful on that. We could put this underneath here, and this underneath the 4. I could put an extra step there. I'm a little worried about that. So we divide everything by -2. So this is divided by -2, and this divided by -2 is -1/2 times x plus 3 squared. And 4 divided by -2 is -2. So I hope you're okay with that. If you want to put an extra step in, you could just put a -2 under that and a -2 under that. Okay? And now we've got this in vertex form, so my vertex is going to be -3 and -2. So let's put our vertex in. And remember, it's shaped like an N, right? Or it's open down. So our vertex is going to be -3, -2, so it's going to be right there. Now, since it's shaped like an N, and it's going down, will it have any zeros? Will it cross the axis? No, it won't cross the axis because it's going down. So, no x-intercepts, so there are none. None. So I don't have to find those. That's going to make it a little shorter problem. That's nice. But we do have to graph it. So we do have the vertex, and the axis of symmetry is the x value of the vertex. And the, well, let me put the vertex in. I didn't do that. Excuse me. That's going to be -3, -2. And this is the x and this is the y. And the x value is just the axis of symmetry. Okay, so the axis of symmetry will be x equals -3. So I'm going to drive that in. And then I can put, I don't have any zeros over here, but I could put my intercept on the other side. So that was -6.5. So I'll go on the other side. This is 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3 over here. And this is what I've got. So I'll be able to sketch it from that. That's about all I've got to sketch. So there we go. So there's your parabola. Try to make it more like a bowl here rather than, a nose cone. Oh, that's vertex form. Excuse me. Put my vertex over here. Excuse me. So this is going to be -3 -2, and there's x, y. And my vertex form, I'll just write it up here, is going to be f of x equals -1/2 x plus 3 squared minus 2. So that was our vertex form, excuse me. Okay, so that's vertex form there, right? And there's our vertex. Do we have a maximum or minimum? It looks like we've got a maximum value because it goes up to here. So the maximum value will be at y equals -2. That's the y coordinate of the vertex, or just -2. And the range, well, we're going to go from -infinity up to -2, and including -2. So the range will be -infinity to -2. And the domain is all real numbers from -infinity to infinity. And I guess I've answered all the questions. So. And since it has no roots, just a little sidebar here. We know the discriminant, that's the part that tells us about the roots. That's our b squared. It's got to be less than 0. It's got to be negative. Okay? So there you go. So there's our vertex form. Opens down, our vertex, y-intercepts, no x-intercepts, range, domain, axis of symmetry is just this line, x equals -3. And there we go. Okay? So if that makes sense.